Hello again, my little yarnivores and spiderettes. Fiber Spider back again with another tutorial just for you. And I thought that with the colder seasons approaching us, that it might be the right time of year to try some slippers. Now, I did a slipper tutorial once before, and I thought, well, let's change it up a little bit. That one was done with granny squares. This one, I think, personally, is a bit easier. And you can actually make them really whatever size you want to. It's really more of a formula than a pattern. And I've seen, styles of these in other places, but I was not following a specific pattern. I was following more of an idea that you can follow along with, and you can create your very own slippers. And of course, you can add to the bottom that sort of slip grip stuffs so that you don't go slip sliding around the kitchen floor. Me, I think it's part of the adventure of life. So what I used for this particular project was Red Heart Super Saver in medium purple, and I actually used 2 sized crochet hooks for the main body of the slipper. I used a size I 5.5 millimeter hook. And when I came to the ribbing for the cuff, I used a size smaller, an H 5.0 millimeter. Now, gauge is not entirely crucial. The yarn that you use is not entirely crucial. Like I said, it's much more of a formula than an actual pattern. And more than likely, you will need to do some tweaking, based on the size of the slipper that you want and the size foot to go into said slipper. So there is a little bit of trial and error, but these are very quick to make, very, very easy, very, very quick. And there's a minimal amount of sewing, just a couple of stitches at the heel, not a big deal. Ooh, I made a rhyme. All right. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, first things first with round 1. Now, what I did, I'm going to sort of backtrack just a smidge. What I did was I did a chaining of 24 with my size I crochet hook. Did a chaining of 24 initially to see if that length of chain would fit around the widest part of my foot. Which, when you have your slipper, the width, the widest part of your foot, if that chain will fit around your foot, not death grip, snugly and not too loosely, then you're on the right track. If not, then you can, change your hook size so that it will be more accommodating, or you can change your multiple, what have you. See, what I did was I started with it was a multiple of 12, so I went from 12 to 24 as far as my stitches are concerned, but so that the ultimate circumference that would go around the widest part of the foot, for me, was 24 stitches. Now, you may, like I said, you may need to do a little bit of tweaking, okay? Or you may need to change your hook size so that it will be more accommodating, or the thickness or thinness of your yarn. This is where there is some tweaking involved. But once you get started, there's no stopping you. So initially, yes, there is a little bit of tweakage involved. So to start with, by the way, I have a size 8 men's shoe. And these are meant to go over your actual socks. I would not suggest wearing these as socks in sneakers. I think it would be a little too thick. But, so we're going to start, of course, with our slip knot, and then chaining up 1 and 2, okay? Because we're going to be doing half double crochets into that first chain, and we need 12. So, going to do 12 half doubles into that first chain. And I'm getting caught on my plies already. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can pull this a little bit more taut. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Now, one thing that you could try doing is to follow what it is that I'm doing specifically, and then from that first, example, if you're following what I'm doing, then finish it and then see, oh, okay, so it needs to be longer, it needs to be wider, thinking outside of the box kind of thing. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So then slip stitch into that first half double, like so. And can cinch this a bit more tight. There you go. And that is the end of round 1. All right, round 2. All right, so from here, we're going to do our increase. So chain up 1, and then into that very same stitch that we did our slip stitch into, 2 half doubles, and actually into each stitch all the way around, 2 half doubles into each stitch. There we go. So I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Okay, and then slip stitch into the first half double, and there you go. That's the end of round 2. So basically what I did was 12 being, really an arbitrary number, but basically it's the first round is your base, and then the second round is double. Now it's that doubled number. As long as that doubled number of stitches in chain form is enough to go around the widest part of your foot. Now this obviously looks rather small, but that's because the stitches are very condensed. As you go on and you stitch, this will expand more. Okay, so don't let this, tiny little circle fool you. No, it will grow as you keep stitching. And so as long as that number of stitches, in this case 24, if that number of stitches in chain form, and if that chain is long enough to go around the widest part of your foot, you should be good. Okay, so now we're going to do a bunch of rounds. Also, keep in mind, you're not going in a continuous spiral. You are chaining up and then doing a slip stitch so that your rounds are separate and that it is not a spiral. I found that that was important too, just so that this is not like amigurumi. So we're going to do a bunch of rounds, And then eventually we will work actually not in the round, but as a flat piece. Don't worry, it'll make sense and I'll walk you through it. All right, let's keep going, shall we? All right, so for round 3, it is going to be just a regular round. No bells, no whistles, very straightforward. All you do is chain up 1, and then into that same first stitch, do a half double. And a half double into each stitch all the way around, just 1 for 1 all the way around, just half double crochets. And the reason why I chose half doubles for this particular project is because I found that single crochet stitches were a bit too stiff and a bit too dense for what I wanted to accomplish, and double crochets are too tall and too airy. So I thought that half doubles were sort of the best of both worlds, sort of like the porridge being just right, not too hot, not too cold. And so Goldilocks is happy. Now, of course, by all means, you can fiddle and finagle and tweak and so on and so forth. This really is much more of a formula, and it worked for me, and I certainly hope that it works for you as well as it did for me, because I love these. Absolutely. And so this is, as I said, this is round 3, and we're going to do the exact same thing for quite a number of rounds. In fact, for me, it is until you do a total of 16 rounds, and that number worked out for me. Okay, so I got all my stitches, and then I need to slip stitch to that first half double right here. Slip stitch right into there, and there you go. So that is the end of round 3, and I'm going to do the rest of my rounds off camera, and I will meet back up with you to show you just about where your piece should be in order to start doing the rest of your piece as a flat piece. Don't worry, it'll make more sense. All right, so I'll be back in a flash. Okie dokie. So if you'll excuse the handheld camera work here. All right, I did a total of 16 rounds, including the ones that we started with, and just worked my way down for 24 stitches all the way around for the circumference of the slipper, 24 rounds in half double crochets, and then I stopped at this point, approximately. It's just before it starts to do the, the curve upwards. Okay, so you should be approximately at this point. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work flat. We're not going to go all the way around. We're going to go back and forth and back and forth, creating a flat piece that will continue down until we reach the heel. Now, at this point, if it is super snug to the point of being uncomfortable, I would say perhaps try a different size hook. Start over, try a different size hook, or try a different number of stitches. This is not the point of no return. I mean, you can, go back and, and then continue on, not a problem. I mean, this hardly took me any time at all to, do this piece right here. So it's not entirely consequential, but this will affect the rest of the slipper. Pardon me. So we're going to continue from here, going in rows as opposed to in rounds, and we're going to stitch until we reach this point. Again, it's a formula, not a pattern. All right, so try to bear with me, folks, and we shall continue on. Alrighty. All right, so this is going to be row, I almost said round, row 1 of working flat. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start pretty much the same way with, of course, a slight difference, naturally. All right, so to begin with, yes, we're going to chain up 1 and do a half double into that same first stitch. And we're going to keep going just as we have been, but we're not going to go all the way around. All right, so I'm going to do a total of 20 half doubles. So 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Now, again, this number that I'm doing right now, 20, that leaves 4 unworked stitches. Now, I did a lot, and I mean a lot, of experimenting at this point. At one point, I did skipping far more stitches, leaving more stitches unworked, and as a result, the slipper did not come up, very far up the side of my foot. And that I felt was, for me, a problem. It's really a matter of personal taste and preference of the look and the functionality that you're going for. When I skipped more stitches, it was more like, if you will, a ballet slipper, the way that it hugged my foot. And to me, it wasn't enough. And I'm going more for function with these and for warmth. So it was more important for me that it hug my foot more. So that's just, again, that's just me personally. But it is at this point that you can make some personal tweaks and changes and so on and so forth. I encourage you to think outside of the box and to try different things. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I need to do one more. And then, of course, yes, I'm going to do a count. All right, so we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Perfect. Okay, so now this obviously does not look like a tremendous opening, just 4 stitches across. But when you fold it like this, and this is the opening here, okay, you see just how far up it's going to cover the sides of your feet. Now, if you skipped more stitches and it's further down here, or even down here, it's going to be more of a, more of like a mule type slipper or what have you. So if you have just a smaller opening at the top, now keep in mind, we're going to travel this way. So there is going to be plenty of space for your foot to go into. That's what I was concerned about, but this does work. All right, so now from here, continuing on with row 2, just going to keep on keeping on right now. From here, what you do is we're going to work back the way we came. So chain up 1, and then turn the work. And then do your half doubles back the way we came until we reach the beginning again. Again, it's going to be 20, in my case, 20 half doubles. And what worked for me personally was doing a total of 10 rows. Now, of course, you may need to do more, you may need to do less. Every foot ultimately is different, and the comfort that it's going for is different. The fitting, the size, the shape. Yeah, that's why this is a formula, not a pattern. When it comes to fitted items, I prefer formulas over patterns any day, because we are all like little snowflakes. We're all different. And I totally respect that. So the idea of a set number of stitches, I think, is not necessarily a functional way to go. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So that being said, I'm almost to the beginning once again where we started. And of course, my yarn decided to knot up on me. Of course. There we go. Easy fix. And also be sure that you get all of your stitches. Otherwise, your piece is going to grow or shrink weirdly. See, right there. Doesn't look like there's a stitch, but I'm pretty sure that that's actually my first stitch. So that is why I always double count as much as it is comfortable. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. Perfect. Okay, so now as you can see, it's a bit more pronounced, the opening. Okay, and let me show you the other way that it looks. This concavity right here, that is our opening for where our foot is going to go into. And so I'm going to do the remaining 8 rows, for me anyway, and I will show you what I'm talking about once I'm done. Alrighty, be right back. Okie dokie, so I did 10 rows, just going back and forth with my half double crochets. It was 20 half doubles going back and forth for 10 rows, and I worked my way. And after putting it on, now you don't want it to, go too far down past your heel. When you are going to sew this closed, it should, stretch a little bit, on your foot. You want it to be a little snug. Otherwise, it's going to be all loosey-goosey and flippy-floppy. And also keep in mind that this top edge, we are going to be doing a bit of a cuff. So if it looks a little bit wonky right now, don't worry. We still have wiggle room to play with. And so upon taking this off of my Tootsie, you can see, just going back and forth with the rows worked out just fine. And, it came up the side of my foot nicely. And it was because we only omitted 4 stitches and we just kept the rest. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip my yarn, giving myself plenty of a tail of yarn to work with, and we're going to sew this back. All right, I'm going to show you that, and then we shall continue on. All right, so I clipped my yarn, already threaded it, and I turned my piece inside out. So this is our initial tail inside out because we want the seam to face inwards. At least I do. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure my tail. Nice and easy. And then folding the piece in half, this is my opening here, we are going to stitch this closed here. And now I know everybody has a different style of sewing crocheted pieces together. I like to go underneath both loops and then underneath both loops and close it up. And then I like to go through the same stitches once again. Now this is just me personally and how I do it. And then I go through the next 2 stitches. So it's underneath both layers of the V, both layers of the V. And I go through both. And then I go through those 2 same stitches once again, because I like my seams to be very secure and sturdy. Some people they go over, just the, the inner loops or just the outer loops, it will create a different effect ultimately. And this is hardly the mattress stitch, I know, but I find that this works for me and for what I'm doing. And then when we get to the very end, you can sew in this tail, no problem. And then after we're done with this, I'm going to show you what we're going to do about the top opening. Now, you don't have to add a cuff. You can leave it as is if you're going for a more simple look. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Another thing that you can do is use a contrasting color yarn for the cuff if you choose to add one. Me, I wanted to go with a homogeneous look where it was all the same yarn. That's just me personally. But you can do whatever, or you could add a bit of fun fur, maybe. That could be fun. A little bit of faux fur action going on there. That could add some interesting visuals. Really whatever works for you. Me, I guess I err on the side of simplicity. That's just me. All right, so we are now done with seaming that up. And then from here, all you do, I'm going to sew in this ends later, but what you do from here is turn your piece right side out. Like so. And then your ends, you can sort of poke those in for now and deal with them later. No big deal. And then there you go. And we have a finished seamed piece. Can hardly even see it there, And now we're going to go around the top edge. Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm switching to my smaller hook. It really, like I said, it doesn't really matter what hook size you use, as long as your second hook is a size or two smaller than the first one that you used for the body of your slipper. Now, also, even though I just said that I'm going to use, the same color of yarn, I thought that it would be better to use a contrasting color of yarn to show you where I'm going into, because we're not going into stitches specifically, because, if we were, it would be this way as opposed to this way. We're working along the sides. So that being said, for the sake of example, I'm going to be showing you with a contrasting color of yarn. So moving right along. All right, now, again, it doesn't entirely matter where you start, but I'm going to start right here at the very back. And I'm going to pull up a loop. And chain one. And then do a single crochet into that same stitch. And it's not entirely crucial where you go into, as long as your stitching is even. Now, this is another point where I did a lot of trial and error to make it, even and not too bunchy. So did one single and then do another single. I'm going to go right in here with another single. And then I'm going to do two singles together so that there will be, I'm going to fill up this edge, but not create a ton of stitches. So going to go into here, pull up a loop, and then go into this space here and pull up a loop and crochet those two together. So it's 1, 2, and then 2 together. And I'm going to do this all the way around. So just a matter of trying to find where it looks right and even. So 1, and then 2, and then I need to do 2 together. You see? And then 1 and 2, and then 2 together. And I found that for me, this worked out rather nicely. 1 and 2, and then 2 together. One and 2 and 2 together. All right, and now we're almost at that point where we have our regular stitches, but I still have this one right here. So I'm going to go into that one as a regular stitch. All right, and then do my 4 single crochets. And quite honestly, I'm not sure if I was saying that I was doing single crochets or not, but I am. I suppose you could do half doubles, but it's just a matter of getting some consistency around this top edge here. So far, so good. All right, so then going back to our pattern of do 1, oops, 1 and 2, and then 2 together, and 1 and 2, and oh, I can fix that. There we go. 2 together, and 1 and 2, and 2 together, 1 and 2, and 2 together. And then at this point, you can add 1, or you could just slip stitch to that first single that we did. Shaboom. And there you go. And this will clean up what we're doing, from here on in. Okay, so from now, we're going to do double crochets, and then we're going to work on front and back post double crochets to create the ribbing. And this worked out well for me. All right, so let's keep on. All right, so now before you go any further, be sure that you can actually put this on and that it fits and that you didn't decrease too much, okay? Again, that's an important factor, So from here, if it does work for you, chain up 2, and into the same stitch, do a double crochet, and then a double crochet into each stitch all the way around until you reach the beginning, just all doubles, because this will be the foundation for our front and back post double crochets in the next rounds for our cuff. Now again, you could do this round and say, hey, I like this. I'm going to keep this. I'm not going to go any further. That's fine. You know, it's all a matter of personal taste and preference. But if you want to go with something that looks more like what I did, well, that's fine too. You know, really whatever works for you. You know, or if you'd rather do a bunch of half doubles at this point and call it a day, that works. You know, that's fine. Or some more singles, that's cool. You know, also, when I was doing my front and back post stitches, I left off after 3 rounds, and I am going to show you how to do them. I left off after 3 rounds. Initially, I did about 10 rounds, and it was, you know, it looked nice, but it was also very bulky. And what I thought I was going to do is I was going to have this really long piece coming up the top and then fold it back to create a folded cuff, you know, like a brim of sorts, like you would on a hat. And one part of me thought that it looked nice. The other part was like, you know what, it's too thick, too cumbersome. So I opted to just go with 3 rounds and not fold it back on itself, you know. So there is, like I said, there is some wiggle room for creative expression and doing what it is that you want to do, which is perfectly cool. All right, so from here, going to do a slip stitch into the first double crochet right here. Da, 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 da. And there you go. So that is the foundation for our front and back post double crochets, and we shall continue on. All right, so this is the last round that I'm going to show you. It's chaining up of 2, and then into this first stitch right here, do a front post, and then go in from the back and do a back post. And then a front post. It's just a front and back 1 by 1 repeat. Just front and then back, and then front and then back, over and over. And if your count isn't exact, I would say don't really worry too terribly much if it's not an even number, because the seam is at the back and it is not, that's why I started at the back, you know, so it's not terribly consequential. It's not like the front of a neckline where that's the first thing that you see. No, it's the back of the heel of your foot, you know, so let's be real. You know, it's not quite the thing that you would notice from a moving horse, so to speak. And so just doing front and back post double crochets all the way around. And now I know that the back post double crochets can be a bit of a beastie. I know, they're not my favorite thing. I like front post stitches. Back post, not so much, because it has a tendency of getting caught on what you're working on. So I know it's a bit of a pain, but it's ultimately, I would say it is worth it, because you end up with a really nice look, and also it creates a nice ribbed, somewhat stretchy material that acts as a really nice cuff. And like I said, I did a total of 3 of these rounds with back post and front post, and I felt that that was sufficient for me. But you can do whatever it is that works for you, of course. You know, I can't stress that enough. You know, I'm not some sort of grand high poobah yarn dictator. No, no, I encourage you to think outside of the box. And some of you have actually shown me some really wonderful pieces where you did think outside of the box and you did create something new, and I encourage that entirely. And so I am almost done with this round. Almost. Just wanted to be thorough for you guys. Okay, and then one more front post. Now the first stitch that we did was a front post. This was the chaining of 2, this was the chaining of 2. So into the top of that first front post double crochet is where we slip stitch into, like so. And see, that worked out rather nicely for us, you see? And then so from here you would chain up 2 and then do a front post into the front post, and then a back post where the back post was, and then another front post, and then another back post. It's always easier on the second round because it's already been established what stitches are what. And just want to finish this last stitch. All right, and there you go. Got some lovely texture going on here. And that, my dears, is how you can make yourself a cozy little house slipper. Yeah, and like I said before, after your piece is done, you could always add that sort of slip grip type of stuff on the base so that you don't go slip sliding around. Unless if you like to live dangerously as I do. I wouldn't necessarily promote that, but I'm just saying, whatever. Most of the floors in my place are carpeted, so that's really not so much of an issue. So, anywho, without further ado, I'm going to make my closing. Thank you so much for watching, as always. And if you liked this video, please give a little thumbs up button down below. I appreciate your appreciation and your support more than you know. And also, if you haven't hit subscribe, please do so, because I do try to post videos often, whether it's crocheting or knitting or audiobook narration, or of course my other YouTube channel, Fiber Spider Games, where I do video game playthrough and commentary. It's a lot of fun, and I'd like to see you there. Also, I have my Etsy store. These personally, these will not be on my Etsy store because the size of a foot is a very specific thing. Same thing with gloves or mittens or that sort of thing. So, they won't be on there. But, check out my store too if you like. And until next time, I want all of you to, you know what? Yeah, stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching. I love you guys, and I'll see you, yes you, in the next video. Bye for now.